Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this is the new Ford Mustang Mach-E. We're living in pretty extraordinary times at the moment where every manufacturer is looking to develop an electric vehicle. But with everyone doing it, you need to be a little bit bold and a little bit daring in order to get customers to look at your new EV. Porsche, for example, made the Taycan a saloon, and it's actually been a massive success for them. Even though we were expecting a sports car or perhaps an SUV, granted the Macan is coming next year. BMW have shocked and surprised us as well by creating an electric vehicle which is suitable for the blind. And now Ford have brought out this, the Mustang Mach-E, which in its shape, it's not very daring. I mean, everyone else is bringing out electric SUVs. The controversial part, however, is here, the badge, because Ford's first electric vehicle has got a Mustang badge on it. Now, I've had this Mustang Mach-E for a week, and I'm going to answer two big questions. Number one, is it a good EV? And number two, is it deserving of that Mustang badge? Well, stick with me to find out. Now, when it comes to the Mach-E styling, of course the controversy is it's not a two-door muscle car, it's a five-door SUV, which is perfect for the family. But you've got to start somewhere. And let's be honest, would you really be paying attention to this if it looked like a Ford Cougar? You probably wouldn't. So Ford have made a real bold statement by A, putting a Mustang badge on the front of the car, but also making it an SUV. But it means it gets noticed, it means it turns heads, and it has definitely done that. Because also, it's a very good looking car. It has got an aggressive front end. At the back we have got the taillights that definitely look like they've come from a Mustang. But it actually looks very sleek and coupe-like. I mean, I love the fact that we haven't got traditional door handles. They're just little buttons that pop open. Now, yes, there's a part of me that's wondering why we haven't got cameras for wing mirrors in order to make it really sleek and aerodynamic. But don't forget, in the US, you can't quite have cameras for wing mirrors just yet. So maybe in the future, we might see that come over to the UK and Europe. But I actually think this is a really good looking car. It clearly turns heads, and I have had a couple of people asking me what it was because they didn't recognise the Mustang badge. Because actually, there's no Ford badge on here whatsoever. It is being branded and sold pretty much as a Mustang. And I actually think that's a brilliant statement by Ford, and it actually shows what the future is going to show us when it comes to the Mustang, and that glorious rumble of that 5-litre V8 becomes just a distant echo of the past. But yeah, let me know what you think of the Mustang Mach-E styling in the comment section below. Personally, I actually think they've done a really good job with it. The proportions are really nice, and do you know what? I think if they lowered this and perhaps squared off the rear, we could actually have a really good looking estate car. So Ford, try and see if you can do that for a future model. But yeah, I'm really impressed with the looks of the Mustang Mach-E, but I actually think it's now time we have a little look at that interior. Sat in the front of the Mach-E, you are greeted by an interior which is, I'm going to say, just as bold as the exterior. I mean, it feels like a Ford, but not as you know it. Now, because this is kind of classed as a crossover SUV, you have got a raised seating position, so getting in and out of the Mach-E is actually really easy. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, then this is definitely one EV to have a look at. And then once you're sat in the driver's seat, you find that these seats are very comfortable. They're not as supportive or as sporty as I was expecting them to be, but they do hold a big bear like me in place, and there is plenty of adjustment, including the steering, which has both rake and reach adjustments. Again, the perfect driving position is easy. Now next comes interior quality, which is a little bit of a mixed bag. So yes, we have got this kind of fabric on the front here, but believe it or not, that's actually hiding a Bang & Olufsen soundbar. We have got a bit of leather here on the dash and a bit of carbon effect trim. We got leather again on top of the door panels, and as well on the door panels themselves and on the armrests. However, on top of the dash is actually hard plastic, which is quite surprising. And on the center console here, although it is actually a pretty decent hard plastic, I would like to see a bit of leather trim here on the side of the center console. The reason being is when I'm on a long journey and I rest my knee against it, it actually digs into my leg. So that's just something to be aware of. Cubby spaces in the Mach-E are actually really impressive. We got some very decent sized door pockets where you can get a medium sized bottle of drink in there, and actually quite a few items as well. But they're not lined with any fabric, so loose items will rattle around a bit. Now on the center console, it's actually really impressive. So firstly, up front we've got this tray area with wireless charging, a little extra bit on the side and a little bit up front in order to perhaps put your wallet or perhaps put your key there. And what I do love is that it is rubber lined as well. Then we have got a couple of cup holders behind, so you can get a medium-sized bottle of drink in there, and it actually won't rattle around that much. Now if you get a small bottle of drink, then it will, so just be aware of that. And of course we've got no manual because it is a full EV, so you're not going to get in the way of the gear lever. Now there is also a bit of under storage under the center console as well. It's a little bit tricky to get to, but perhaps your passenger could put some items behind there. Now behind the gear selector we have got your armrest, which lifts up to actually reveal an extra bit of cubby space, which is lined with fabric, which I really do like. And I love the fact you can actually close it off so people can't look in there, so that is really handy. Then the glove box is actually of a decent size. I would prefer it to be a little bit bigger, especially as we've got this kind of shelving bit here, which kind of actually could give you a bit more space. But other than that, it's of a decent size, but it's not lined with any fabric again, so loose items will rattle around a bit. And then finally we have got your sunglasses holder, which I have got a nice bit of rubber in there, which I do like. It does feel of a good quality. So yeah, cubby spaces in the Mach-E are actually really impressive, and it does show that Ford are kind of using the, the top 2 inches in order to make use of this electric platform. Now something we are seeing with a lot of manufacturers is that they're not quite yet ready to go with a full massive infotainment system and have all the buttons kind of shoved onto there, and therefore you've got a completely clear interior. Now Ford are almost there, so when it comes to actual physical buttons on the infotainment screen, we have got a rotary dial, we have got another rotary dial here for the gear select, we also got one for the self-parking, hazard lights, and also the electric handbrake. Then of course we've got your steering wheel controls, and on the right hand side we've got a couple of controls to actually operate the light switch. And then apart from the windows on the doors, then that's pretty much it. There's actually very few buttons in here, but I don't feel like I'm missing out. Oh yeah, there is one button I forgot to mention, that is the power button, which is here on the dashboard. So you can tell that Ford have actually, again, been really bold by having a lot of the features of the Mach-E operated via the infotainment system. So of course the one thing you're probably wondering is, well, is it a good system? So when it comes to that infotainment system, we have a 15.5 inch touchscreen display. Yes, of course, it does feel very Tesla-esque, and some people I don't think will have liked the fact that it feels like it's been kind of pressed onto the dashboard. Now, personally, I got no issues with it whatsoever, apart from one thing, and that is I'd love it to be turned towards the driver. If Ford want this to be seen as kind of a sporty SUV, then it needs to be driver-centric, and I'd love this screen to be turned towards me. Now you have got your usual things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and they're wireless as well. We have got a USB-C and a USB-A charging input just below there on the little tray area, and a 12-volt socket in the underarm storage. Now for an infotainment system, it's actually really good. It's very responsive. The menu system at the beginning, when you kind of get into the car, could be a little bit confusing, but as time goes on you actually get used to it. Now we have your climate control buttons kind of right at the bottom of the screen. That's something we're starting to see nowadays, but there is a dedicated button which brings up that on the screen for you, so you can get things like the air direction or even get the heated windscreen working, which I really do like. Then we have got this rotary dial here, which actually works as your volume control. Again, it seems to be a bit of a Marmite feature, but I actually really like it, and I experienced something very similar on the new Lexus NX. And I just think it's very quirky and just kind of making use and making something look a little bit different. And it actually means that there's a button in the center in order to mute or turn off the system. Now the screen is kind of divided into about 3 different areas. So at the bottom, as I mentioned, we have got your dual zone climate control. We have got a strip of, they're kind of like shortcut buttons there where you can go onto things like your trip computer. You can look at things like the car, for example, and things like that. Then just above there, we've got your Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, or anything where basically that shortcut button takes it up there. And then at the top of the screen, we've got a couple of little drop-down menus. Now, one of them just kind of goes to things like your shortcut buttons, so your media, your phone, your Bluetooth, things like that. And then we've got a little picture of the Mach-E as well, so that's your driver features. So that does things like your drive mode selects, but you can also go quite in depth and actually kind of tweak the settings of the Mach-E. So there's a lot to take in when you start driving, but you're kind of find it's actually pretty intuitive and easy to use when on the move. It is very responsive as well, and I am actually impressed with it. Now, yes, this, as I mentioned, people will think this has kind of been stolen from Tesla, but you know what? You've got to start somewhere, and soon I'm sure Ford will kind of change this and tweak it as time goes on. Now, one thing that's surprising in the Mach-E is that we don't have a head-up display, but we have got this digital dashboard display, and I really do like it. It does sit nicely on the dashboard, and it actually doesn't overload you with information. You essentially get the bare minimum. You get things like your range, you get your battery level, you get your speedometer, and if you've got the adaptive cruise on, that will come on as well. And I love the fact that there's this kind of water effect going on in the background, so there's a nice cute animation there, but it's not distracting if that's what you're thinking. So that is something I do like about the Mach-E. Now, when it does come to some of the physical buttons, they are very easy to operate. So on the steering wheel, on the left-hand side, it's very easy. It just does your adaptive cruise control and your driver aids. And on the right-hand side, it does your audio and communication controls. Now, speaking of audio, one of the things I've already mentioned is that we actually have a Bang & Olufsen soundbar in the dashboard, and it is... oh, it's really lovely. I've been listening to some of my tunes this week, and it's been an absolute joy. Okay, granted, I have scared a few people in the village listening to my German heavy metal, but that's just me. Of course, you can listen to whatever you like. But it does bring on the final thing about the interior of the Mach-E, which is some of the interior quality. So as I mentioned, I would love this to be soft touch plastic on top of the dashboard, but I do like this fabric effect because it does cover the speakers. Now, here on the center console where we've got your drive select or your rotary dial select, what I like is, even though we're parked up now, it kind of rocks a little bit, which doesn't feel too premium, but when the car is switched on, it just keeps on spinning. So I can have the brake pedal on, and just know that with 3 little clicks I'll go from park to drive. But I can just keep on turning it, which I don't really like. It kind of takes away that air of quality in the Mach-E, which is a little bit disappointing. But that's only a minor niggle, and Ford can easily rectify that. But I have to say, yes, the interior of the Mach-E is very bold. I do like the design. I'd like it to be a little bit more driver-centric, but other than that, no, it's a very comfortable place to be, and it does have a quality feel to it, but yes, some of its rivals do feel a little bit more premium, but I don't really think you can have too many issues with it. So yeah, it's really nice here in the front of the Mach-E Mustang, and I think it's now time we see what it's like in those back seats. Sat in the back of the Mach-E, it's actually really comfortable back here, and I could easily do a long journey in this car. Now, firstly, the driver's seat is not set to my driving position. It's actually moved back several inches to allow easy exit out of the driver's seat. But I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see, I've got a good amount of knee room, and headroom is actually really good as well. And I can actually get my feet underneath the front seat as well, so I am able to stretch out a bit. I think 6-footers won't have much of an issue sat back here in the Mach-E, unless of course you've got a taller driver. And I do recommend probably having 2 adults sat in the back of the Mach-E and not 3, but it will be suitable for 3 kids. Now, speaking of kids, we have got ISOFIX supports on the outer seat, and there is like a little slit in the leather to make it easy to affix the child's seat, which is really handy. Now, when it comes to cubby spaces, we've actually got some very decent door pockets, again not lined with any fabric, but you can easily get a medium-sized bottle of drink in there. We have got your aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats. We haven't got any storage here on the back of the centre console, but we have got your armrest with a couple of additional cup holders, which is really handy. Now, when it comes to features, we have of course got the Bang & Olufsen sound system back here as well with the speakers. We have got a couple of air vents, and we've also got a USB-C and USB-A charging input, so that is really handy. The windows are of a decent size as well. They do allow a nice amount of light in. However, they only open about 95% of the way, but actually means I can still get my arm on top of the door, so I can actually rest it there on a long journey on a sunny day. But other than that, it feels really lovely and airy back here because of this panoramic glass roof. And what I like as well is because it's not a traditional sunroof, you can sit yourself a little bit taller and a bit prouder, and you know you're not going to touch the headlining. So I do love that feature. And I love the fact as well that it is really heavily polarised, just like I experienced with the Polestar 2 and Porsche Taycan. And that's something I really do like, because if you can drive a car like this with a panoramic glass roof and not really know it's there, then you definitely know it's not going to give you a bit of a sunburn on a sunny day, which I really do like. But all in all, I really do like it here in the back of the Mach-E. There is plenty of space and it is actually really comfortable as well. So I think on that note, it's now time we go to the back of the Mach-E and see what it's like in that boot. Now, opening the boot of the Mach-E does present you with the car's Achilles heel, because with the boot open, you've got 402 litres of space, which is possibly the worst in class, especially when compared to the likes of the Ioniq 5 or even Skoda Enyaq. However, it is a nice wide square load area and it actually looks a lot larger than those 402 litres suggest. So you can easily get a couple of suitcases in there or a few weekend bags. Now, it's not devoid of features either. We have got some sturdy tethering hooks, we've got a 12-volt socket and a couple of little extra cubby spaces on the sides of the boot. And if you do decide to get the 60/40 rear seats down, you have an almost completely flat load area, so that does boost practicality. Then we have got some underfloor storage, which is perfect because you've got a couple of bags there for your 2 charging cables, your 3-pin and Type 2, but there's actually a bit more space in there to perhaps chuck a couple of personal items in there, or maybe some washer fluid, etc. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing that it has got such a small boot and a relatively high boot lip as well, but it is very usable. If you've got a young family, that's perfect for your shopping and definitely getting your luggage in if you're deciding to go on a weekend trip. So yeah, all in all, it is a practical car, but just nowhere near the best in class. And on that note, I think it's time we take this electric Mustang for a drive. So once you get driving in the Mach-E, first impressions are really positive. Of course, this being a full electric vehicle, you don't get the humming of an internal combustion engine up front, so it does feel very refined, very easy to drive, and actually it's lovely and quiet and comfortable in here. Now, because this is an SUV slash crossover, it does mean I've got a raised seating position, so when it comes to all-round visibility, it is actually pretty good. I've got a lovely view of the road ahead, and I do love the curvature of the bonnet as I look forward. The A-pillars are quite thick, but I've not found myself looking around them at any junctions. The wing mirrors are of a decent size and they do aid as well with all-round visibility. And if I look over my shoulder, there's not the thickest of C-pillars, but there is a little bit of a blind spot there. But I have got blind spot monitoring on this particular car. And rear visibility is really good as well. However, I will note that the outer seats in the back, the headrests do obstruct your view slightly. So that's just something to be aware of. But all in all, first impressions when you start driving the Mach-E are really positive. It is a very good first impression of this new electric car from Ford. Now, there are no trim levels per se in the Mach-E range, apart from the top of the range GT, which is definitely the performance version of the Mach-E range. So what you essentially have is the entry-level Mach-E, which is a rear-wheel drive single motor version of the Mach-E. You then have an all-wheel drive twin motor version of the Mach-E, and then you've got the top of the range GT, which is the same as the all-wheel drive version, but just with more power out of the battery. Now, the one thing you can do is you can go for the rear-wheel drive version of the Mach-E, but you can actually spec it with the larger battery, and that also means you get a longer range from that particular car. So if you are after the longest range possible, that would be the one to go for. If you go for this all-wheel drive extended range version, yes, you get over 300 miles of range. You get around 335, but it's not quite the 379 you'd get if you went for the kind of lower down version, if that makes sense. Kind of reminds me in a way of the Polestar in the way that they kind of set up the trim levels of that particular EV. But essentially, if you want the mad performance version, go for the GT. If you want the perfect all-rounder, just go straight for the all-wheel drive extended range. If you want the most range out of your Mach-E, go for the rear-wheel drive version, but spec up to the all-wheel drive battery. I hope that makes sense. And then that way you should have up to 379 miles of range. So yeah, there's essentially a Mach-E for everyone. And also the reason I say go for the rear wheel drive and spec up to the all wheel drive is because you get pretty much the same performance, but you don't actually pay as much as this all wheel drive version. In fact, you still get slightly smaller alloy wheels, but what you can do is you can add things like a tech pack to the car, and then that way you're pretty much on a level spec for spec. So that would be my kind of pick of the range and my definite opinion of what to go for. Go for the rear wheel drive version, but then just spec up to the larger battery. Now, I've talked about those batteries and what to kind of go for when it comes to trim levels, but what about the battery sizes? So if you go for the rear-wheel drive version of the Mach-E, it's a 70 kilowatt hour battery. You can then spec it up to a 98 kilowatt hour battery, and that's what you get on the all-wheel drive version and on the GT, and that is hugely impressive. That is a massive battery in a car like this. I think it's actually one of the largest batteries you can get, which kind of explains why it has got a pretty decent range advertised by Ford. Now, when it comes to performance, so when you go for the rear-wheel drive version, you got 265 brake horsepower. If you go for the standard kind of all-wheel drive version, which is what I've got here, it goes up to 292 brake horsepower. And then that Mega GT, well, yes, that's got 480 brake horsepower, so it really does cover all the bases in terms of what you're after from the Mach-E. Now, when that comes to actual performance itself, it does mean that the rear-wheel drive version will hit 0 to 62 in 7 seconds. This all-wheel drive version will do the same, but in 5.8 seconds. And then the GT version, which is just, as I mentioned, the mad version, will take just 3.7 seconds. So that's just a little bit slower than a Porsche Taycan Turbo, which is really impressive. So yeah, the great thing about the Mustang Mach-E is that there is a version out there for everyone, which is actually a really nice thing to come across. Now, with that, of course, comes the range of the cars. So if you go for the rear-wheel drive version of the Mach-E, you got a range of 273 miles. You go for this all-wheel drive version of the Mach-E, you've got 335 miles. However, if you go for the lower down spec with the larger battery, that goes up to 379 miles. And then you've got the Mad GT, which goes up to 310 miles of range. So the one thing I'm really actually impressed with is that you can get more than 300 miles from a single charge in the Mach-E. I mean, there's a lot of cars out there where they're in the kind of mid 200s to late 200s, but to know that you can actually get over 300, and that's what advertised by Ford, well, that is pretty impressive. Now, when it comes to charging your Mach-E, and this is regards to the 70 kilowatt hour battery, if you're looking to use a 3-pin socket, it's going to take around 33 hours. So that's pretty much your weekend all done and dusted. If you're going to use a 7 kilowatt charger, you're going to look at 11 hours, and if you're going to use a 22 kilowatt charger, you're looking at about 7 hours. Now, if you use a 50 and 150 kilowatt charger, and this is going from 20 to 80%, you're looking at around an hour and 30 minutes respectively. So that's actually pretty impressive. However, I have tried a supercharger on the Mach-E and it wouldn't seem to go over 120 or 125 kilowatts. But you know what? I managed to charge it up really quickly for what I needed to complete my journey, so I had no real issues with it. Now, I will mention, yes, because that's the rear-wheel drive version of the Mach-E, I am going to put on screen now what it will be like for the all-wheel drive version of the Mach-E. So you can see there, it's still actually a nice, decent and usable amount of charging times. It's not really going to take up too much of your day if you're doing a long journey. Now, one of the things I do like about the Mach-E is that it has got a few gimmicks about it. So firstly, on the speed, it does actually say ground speed, which I think is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of way to phrase it, but it makes me think, are they developing some sort of aircraft so that you go from ground speed to airspeed? Maybe they're going to call it the Mustang Mach Air. I don't know, something to think about. And then when we come to the drive modes, now of course we've got the three usual ones you get in any car. You get normal, you get eco, and you get sport. But Ford have gone a different way of naming them. So if you're going to go with the eco side or the quiet side, it's called Whisper. If you want to have just kind of normal driving, so you've got, you know, the great day-to-day performance that you're going to want from the car, you've got Active. And then if you want to go into sport mode, well, it's called Untamed. And I do like that. It's kind of as quirky as Tesla is with its plaid effect and its ludicrous mode. And I love the fact that they've called it Untamed, because it's the kind of links with a Mustang, doesn't it? That kind of wild stallion type thing. Or maybe that's just me, I don't know. But I do like it. It's a little bit quirky, it's a little bit different. But I do like the fact they I do think it matches the Mustang Mach-E in terms of what the car can do. So what's the ride, refinement and handling like in the Mach-E? Well, you can probably tell looking at me now, I am kind of wobbling around a little bit, and that is one of the things I've noticed about the ride, particularly at low speed. It is quite unsettled, and you do get a lot of the booms and vibrations coming into the cabin, and if you do go over a pothole or a manhole cover, you can get a little bit of a jolt, despite the fact that we have got 19-inch alloy wheels, but we have got quite a nice chunky sidewall to them. Now, one bonus I will say is that the fact that these seats are really comfortable and they are very heavily cushioned. So as a result, they do take a big chunk of that unsettled ride out before it gets to the body, which I think is a big bonus. But yeah, it's a little bit firmer than I was expecting it to be. It's possibly, I'd say, on a par with the Polestar 2. And when you get up to kind of higher speeds, you do find that the ride does settle down, but every so often you do get that little bit of unsettledness kind of coming into the cabin. But I have done a couple of very long trips in the Mach-E, one of them in total over about 400 miles. And I came out the other end actually feeling relaxed and not too tired or anything from the journey. In fact, what is quite nice is because you've got all the driving aids and everything on the car, you can just put on the adaptive cruise, let the car do its thing, and it then just takes kind of an extra bit of workload away from you. So I did find that really handy. But yeah, when it comes to the facelift version of the Mach-E, I would like Ford just to have a little look at that ride quality, just try and see if we can smooth out some of those imperfections there. Now, when it comes to the refinement side, again, for the most part, because this is an electric car, it's actually really good. It is very quiet. There's hardly any wind noise coming off the A-pillar or the wing mirrors, which is actually really nice. And tyre roar is actually kept to a minimum. The only time you really get tyre roar coming into the cabin is if you do drive over a very poor road service, and unfortunately in the UK we have quite a few of those. But for the most part, like I'm driving now on this little A road, it's actually really nice. I think there's actually like a faint engine hum going on in the background because I've got the propulsion sound turned on. Yes, it's a little bit of a gimmick, but you know what? Sometimes, you know, you don't want to fully depart from having an ICE vehicle, and it's quite nice to have a little bit of engine noise, albeit synthesized, coming into the cabin. But refinement, I've again had no issues with it. I've been able to have a passenger in the car for a long journey. We've been able to talk and not have any issues on that journey, which is a real good positive. So yeah, the ride quality is just, it needs improving, but the refinement side I'm actually really happy with. So what's the handling like in the Mach-E? Well, this is a Ford after all, so handling is actually really good. It feels engaging. It can put a smile on your face. I'm actually driving in whisper mode currently, so I think let's try and put it into untamed, shall we, and see what it gives us. So we've got that engine noise now, propulsion coming into the cabin. I can already feel that the ride has stiffened up a little bit. a little bit of tyre squirrel there. So that kind of shows the fact that this is an electric vehicle. It's not a light car, so it did possibly want to push itself out wide a little bit there. So that's just something to be aware of, because this is a car, of course, that is going to weigh over 2 tons. But with the all-wheel drive, it feels really engaging. It's actually a little bit kind of, I don't know, there's like a little bit of a bite to it as well, which I wasn't expecting from a little car. I say little car, an electric car like this. And I don't know if you can just hear that engine noise or that synthesized noise in the background. It's kind of a combination of an engine noise with a Star Trek style sci-fi noise. But it is engaging. It does reward you. The steering has got a nice amount of feedback to it. It is responsive as well. You don't feel like you're in a video game. And actually the ride on this road, I know this road is not the smoothest, but the ride seems to have settled a bit. The only thing I'm probably going to say now is, Ford, can we have a custom mode where we can perhaps have the suspension of untamed with the throttle response of active or something like that, you know, so we can kind of customize the drive mode setting. But I got a nice little right and left hander here, which is always a good test. Now you might hear some of my equipment go around. Let's have a little look. I've got tyre squeal. I think that's the first time I've gone around that corner and I've had tyre squeal. That's actually really cool. And it is putting a smile on my face. Right, madness off, back to Whisper. So yeah, handling, very, very impressive. I do like it here in the Mach-E. There is one negative, however, and it's something that I've experienced in the Cougar, and I have experienced it in the Fiesta ST, although I didn't film that car, is the fact that the steering kind of has this feeling of wanting to right itself and recenter itself. But it's not as abrupt in the Mach-E as it was in the Cougar. But again, that's just something to be aware of. It is something that we've seen in Ford cars of late. But no, as a fun EV, it really is. It is engaging. It does put a smile on your face, and as you saw there with Untamed on, you can get the tyres to squeal a little bit as well. So it is a fun electric car. Especially, I reckon, if you've got the family in here with you, they'll definitely love that. Maybe not your wife, but we'll see. So what have been some of the highlights and some of the low points I've experienced with the Mach-E and my time with it? Well, I think I've covered everything. I mean, I would like to see the interior quality kind of given a little bit of a boost. I do think it's a little bit poor compared to some of its rivals. And again, I'd like to see a bit of leather there on that centre console so I could rest my leg against it. Ford does need to work on the practicality side of the Mach-E, and also just needs to kind of work on that suspension just to get the ride a little bit softer and more forgiving, particularly at lower speed. But other than that, I don't really think there's many other negatives. I mean, in terms of positives, I do like this infotainment screen. Once you kind of get used to it, it is nice and intuitive and easy to use, especially when on the move. I do like the fact that we've got the digital dash, which is not too intrusive. It gives you all the information that you want. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, it's a bit surprising we don't have a head-up display, but that is a perfect digital dash. It's nice, it's not too big, it's not too intrusive, and does everything you want it to. The safety systems in the car are not too intrusive. Yes, once in a blue moon you do get the lane keep assist just kind of holding you in place a little bit, but as I said, it's not too intrusive, it's not too grabby. All in all, as a first kind of car, electric car from Ford, I think it's an absolutely brilliant effort, and I think it's now time that we move on to the conclusion. So, what are my thoughts on the Ford Mustang Mach-E EV? Well, for a first effort from Ford, I am very much impressed by it. It's got really good looks, it's practical, it's comfortable. When I say practical, I mean in terms of rear passenger space. Yes, the boot and practicality in that regard needs improving, and the ride does need improving as well. But Ford have kind of been, in my opinion, kind of falling behind a little bit. They've just been kind of in the background, not really doing much. And now they've come out with the Mustang Mach-E, they now need to bring a next EV out, and this one has got to be competitive against a lot of the consumer brands. Now, Ford have announced that there are going to be a few EVs coming in the near future, including a Puma EV. Now, I'm already a little bit worried about that car, not necessarily in terms of its capabilities and things like that, but in the fact of if it's based on the car with an internal combustion engine, because we're going to have some of the niggles and issues that we've experienced with cars like the Kona E and also the E-Niro, cars which have been based on platforms with an internal combustion engine. But as a start from Ford, I'm really impressed by it. Yes, it is flawed, but they've got themselves a very distinctive car, they've got themselves a very comfortable car. And I asked a couple of questions at the beginning of this video, which is one, is this Mach-E deserving of a Mustang badge? And also, is the Mustang Mach-E any good? Well, I've answered the second question. Yes, it is a good electric car, flawed, but very good. But when it comes to the Mustang badge, I'm going to say yes and no. Yes, because this is the way that the world is moving forward. But no, in the fact of, I see this particular Mustang Mach-E and the rear-wheel drive version as kind of the 2.3 litre EcoBoosts. Yes, it has a Mustang badge on it, but it's not a real Mustang. And the fact that we got the GT version available, that's the proper Mustang. That's the proper electric Mustang that people will be wanting. Now, unfortunately, yes, price-wise, it is going to be priced ever so slightly out of reach for most drivers out there, but there will be a point where hopefully prices will come down with these kinds of vehicles. But I love the fact that we have got a Mustang badge on this. There are no Ford badges in here whatsoever. So in a way, Ford have been really quite forceful of, yes, giving it the Mustang badge and the Mustang name. I personally feel that this particular one, it feels like, as I said, the EcoBoost version, but it just happens to have a Mustang badge on it. Maybe once I review the GT version, and if you'd like me to, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll have a chat with Ford for you. But yeah, the GT is the proper Mustang. This is the little EcoBoost version. We've got the Mustang badge, but we just haven't got that Mustang feel that I've experienced with particularly the Bullet from last year. So it's a very good car. This particular one, I would like to see a Ford badge on it, but we got the Mustang badge. And it's still a good thing to have a Mustang badge because it's a Mustang badge. I really hope that makes sense. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the new Ford Mustang Mach-E. I realise I'm now saying this final bit on a road which is not the flattest or smoothest. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. If you've got any questions about the Mach-E and my time with it, please put them down in the comments section below. And of course, I'm on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, so don't forget to follow on there as well for additional content, including live videos and still images of launches and events that I go to, and also cars I review. But in the meantime, I hope you guys all stay safe, I hope you all look after each other, and I will catch you all in the next video. So take care everybody, and goodbye.